A man tried to set up a hammock in the cabin. He had two large industrial-strength suction cups and was trying to attach them to the overhead bins across the aisle. His plan was to sleep in his hammock instead of his seat. He was genuinely baffled when we told him it was a safety violation, arguing that it was ergonomically superior and that we should be thanking him for innovating air travel. A man brought a live ferret on board, hiding it in his jacket. Mid-flight, it got loose and chaos erupted. The ferret was surprisingly fast, darting under seats and up people's legs. One woman screamed, thinking it was a rat. We spent 30 minutes trying to catch this thing. The owner just sat there saying, "He's just being playful. He likes to explore," as if we were all at a ferret park. A man was upset about the lack of legroom. He didn't complain. Instead, he decided to solve the problem by trying to unbolt his own seat from the floor. He had a small wrench set and was actively trying to remove the bolts, planning to just slide the whole seat back a few inches. He couldn't understand that the seats were bolted down for a reason, named to prevent them from becoming projectiles during a crash. A woman came to the galley with her empty water bottle and asked me to fill it. I did. She then came back 5 minutes later and said the water tasted too much like airplane. She demanded to know where we sourced our water from and asked if we had any artisanal triple, filtered spring water from a non-volcanic region. I offered her a bottle of Dasani. She looked at it with disgust and said, "I'd rather dehydrate." A passenger brought a small portable smoke machine on the plane. He claimed it was for his respiratory therapy. He turned it on, and a thick, odorless fog began to fill the cabin, causing a panic as people thought it was smoke. He was completely oblivious to the chaos, just sitting there peacefully inhaling the vapor, saying it was infused with calming chamomile. A woman asked me if I could make an announcement to the entire plane to ask if anyone had a spare iPhone charger. When I told her I couldn't do that, she got upset. 10 minutes later, she stood up on her seat and yelled, "Does anyone have a lightning cable? I'm on 4%. She then got angry when the captain came on the PA to tell everyone to remain seated. A passenger decided the cabin was too cold. Instead of asking for a blanket, he took out a small votive candle, placed it on his tray table, and lit it to create a warmer ambiance. A flight attendant saw the open flame and rushed over with a cup of water to douse it. The man was furious that she ruined his cozy atmosphere and demanded compensation for his damaged property. The 50-cent candle. A woman insisted that the turbulence was fake. She claimed that airlines create artificial turbulence to scare passengers into buying more drinks to calm their nerves. She was trying to start a class action lawsuit mid-flight, taking down names of other passengers who felt the manufactured bumps were a blatant cash grab. She even accused the pilot of getting a commission on gin and tonics. A man brought his own food on board, a dozen hard-boiled eggs. As soon as we reached cruising altitude, he peeled all 12 of them, releasing the potent sulfuric smell throughout the cabin. He then proceeded to eat them one by one, very slowly, for the next hour. When people complained, he held up an egg and said, "It's my protein." Are you anti-protein? That's discrimination. He had weaponized his diet. A man in an aisle seat brought a small portable laser tag gun and vest. He kept trying to get his friend across the aisle to play a game with him. He would duck and weave behind the beverage cart, firing the harmless infrared beam and making pew-pew noises. We had to explain that even a fake gun game was wildly inappropriate and was making people extremely uncomfortable. He sulked. "Fine, you just don't like fun." A man was sitting by the window, and every time a flight attendant walked by, he would point outside and ask, "What's that?" He wasn't pointing at landmarks, but at clouds. "What's that fluffy one called? What about that wispy one?" He was treating us like museum tour guides for the sky. After the 5th time, I just said, "Sir, that's a cloud." And he replied, "Yes, but what's its name?" A woman insisted on breastfeeding her hairless Sphinx cat in her seat. She had it wrapped in a baby blanket and was trying to get it to latch. When we told her that was unsanitary and not allowed, she became furious, proclaiming it was her lactating support animal and that we were discriminating against her unique maternal bond. She then accused the other passengers of being cat-phobic when they complained. A man in economy decided he deserved a first-class experience. After takeoff, he pulled out a twin-size bedsheet and tried to thumbtack it to the ceiling and the seat in front of him to create a private suite. When I told him he couldn't do that, he then set up 2 miniature velvet ropes and stanchions in the aisle to section off his row. He popped a bottle of warm Andre champagne, spraying the person next to him, and then had the audacity to demand I bring him a real glass flute because his suite was now a plastic-free zone. A man was watching a movie on his laptop without headphones at full volume. The person next to him asked him to use headphones. He refused, saying, "I have a constitutional right to freedom of expression, and my expression right now is this action movie." The other passenger replied, "My right is to peace and quiet." The first man then yelled, "My rights are louder than your rights." A woman complained that the baby crying a few rows behind her was ruining her experience. She asked if we could move the baby to the cargo hold. When we, horrified, said no, she suggested we at least put it in the overhead bin for a while. She was dead serious, arguing that it's basically the same as a carry-on bag, just noisier. A woman in a window seat frantically pressed her call button. When I arrived, she pointed to the engine on the wing and said, "Excuse me. That big fan thing has been on the entire time. It's very loud and I can't nap. Can you ask the pilot to please turn it off for a little while?" I had to stand there and explain with a straight face that the fan thing was the jet engine and was somewhat critical to our ability to remain in the air. She just sighed and said, "Well, it's very inconsiderate." A man insisted on bringing his emotional support plant, a 4-foot-tall potted ficus tree, on board. He argued that the cargo hold would be too traumatic for Ferdinand. When we told him it couldn't go in the cabin, he offered to buy Ferdinand his own seat. The ticketing agent explained that plants don't qualify for seats, so he spent the next 20 minutes arguing that Ferdinand had more of a personality than most people and deserved to travel with dignity. A passenger brought a full-size blender in his carry-on. Mid-flight, he took it to the galley, plugged it in, and tried to make a smoothie with protein powder and bananas he had brought. The noise was deafening and it blew a fuse, knocking out the power to the coffee makers. He was shocked that we were upset, saying, "I just needed my post-workout shake. You guys should really have a smoothie bar." A passenger was furious that our in-flight entertainment system didn't have the specific season of the reality show he was binge-watching. He called me over and demanded I download the new episodes onto the plane's main computer. He couldn't grasp that the system was a closed loop and that we couldn't just connect to Netflix. He accused us of false advertising because the screen was, in his words, useless. A man brought his own food on board, a dozen hard-boiled eggs. As soon as we reached cruising altitude, he peeled all 12 of them, releasing the potent sulfuric smell throughout the cabin. He then proceeded to eat them one by one, very slowly, for the next hour. When people complain, he held up an egg and said, "It's my protein. Are you anti-protein? That's discrimination." He had weaponized his diet. A man was caught using the suction cup on his GPS to stick it to the airplane window. He was trying to double-check the pilot's route. He called me over to show me that according to his Garmin, the pilot was about 3 degrees off the most efficient course to Dallas. He asked me to please pass his navigational advice along to the cockpit so we could save fuel and get there Faster. A passenger was convinced the Wi-Fi signal was stealing his thoughts. He fashioned a tinfoil hat mid-flight and put it on. He then began walking up and down the aisle, trying to hand out smaller pieces of tinfoil to others, passengers, warning them that the airline was downloading their memories to sell to advertisers. He called it cognitive piracy and demanded to see the captain's tinfoil hat to ensure he was also protected. A woman was caught in the lavatory trying to dye her hair. She had a box of dark brown permanent dye, and the chemical smell was overwhelming. She had managed to splash the dye all over the mirror, the sink, and the walls, making it look like a crime scene. Her defense when we confronted her was, "What? The lighting in here is excellent, and I have a date as soon as we land. I'm being efficient." We had to lock the lavatory for the rest of the flight. A man was sitting in an exit row. During the briefing, the flight attendant asked him if he was willing and able to perform the required duties. He confidently said, "Yes, absolutely." A few minutes later, we saw him struggling to read the menu. The flight attendant went back and asked, "Sir, can you see the card?" He admitted, "Oh no, I forgot my glasses. I can't see a thing." He had just agreed to a critical safety duty he was completely incapable of performing. A man brought a small, portable laser tag gun and vest. He kept trying to get his friend across the aisle to play a game with him. He would duck and weave behind the beverage cart, firing the harmless infrared beam and making pew pew noises. We had to explain that even a fake gun game was wildly inappropriate and was making people extremely uncomfortable. He sulked. "Fine, you just don't like fun." A man brought his own food on board. A dozen hard-boiled eggs. As soon as we reached cruising altitude, he peeled all 12 of them, releasing the potent sulfuric smell throughout the cabin. He then proceeded to eat them one by one, very slowly, for the next hour. When people complained, he held up an egg and said, "It's my protein." Are you anti-protein? That's discrimination. He had weaponized his diet.